What makes you so certain that these Gospels are accurate tellings of what happened?
Great question. You are a thinker, and I appreciate it a lot. All right, you're right. How do we know that the Jesus we read about in the Gospels was a real historical person? Why do you trust the Gospels?
What makes the Gospels trustworthy? And why would anyone stake their entire life on them? An agnostic student puts that challenge squarely to Pastor Cliffe Knechtle, pressing him on what gives him such certainty that the Gospel accounts are accurate reflections of what truly happened. It's a fair and honest question that cuts right to the heart of Christian faith. Why trust these particular documents over any other ancient text? Pastor Cliffe doesn't flinch, walking through the historical, literary, and personal reasons behind his confidence in the Gospels. Watch the full conversation and tell us in the comments, do you find his reasoning convincing? Let's dive in.
What makes you so certain that these Gospels are accurate tellings of what happened?
Great question. You are a thinker, and I appreciate it a lot. All right, you're right. How do we know that the Jesus we read about in the Gospels was a real historical person? Why do you trust the Gospels? Because I have tests that I use to determine historicity claimed by any book. And I would encourage you to come up with your own tests. Obviously, there's nothing magical about my tests. My tests are for internal consistency. Are there contradictions within the text between the different eyewitnesses that point to massive confusion? No, when you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there are differences, as we talked about earlier, but there's a tremendous internal consistency. Second test, literary style. What is the literary style of the document? Or what's the literary style of the Iliad and the Odyssey?
Epic poetry.
Bingo. Precisely. The Iliad and the Odyssey are not historical narrative. They're epic poetry. The Gospels are not epic poetry. They are historical narrative. That's important, the literary style. Thirdly, archaeology. Are we talking about the island of Atlantis out in the ocean that none of us can verify? No. We're talking about Bethlehem, Nazareth, Jerusalem, Rome.
Yeah.
Archaeologically verifiable places. And then fourthly, good gracious, what's the manuscript evidence that we really have what the eyewitnesses wrote? And the New Testament that we have today in English is based on over 5,800 Greek manuscripts or pieces of manuscript dated from the 2nd through the 10th century AD.
Yes.
In fact, if we were to lose all of them, we wouldn't have a problem. Because the early church fathers between the 2nd and 4th century quote the New Testament 38,289 times. Every verse except 11 in the New Testament
very remarkably well
are quoted by these early church fathers. So we have such a plethora of evidence that we really have what Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wrote. We don't have the original autographs. The original manuscripts are either destroyed or we'll find them someday. But the overwhelming evidence is it's historically reliable, the New Testament that we have in English. Does that make any sense?
I think that's, and I mean, definitely as if like you say, these are historical accounts or secondary accounts like Mark and Luke are, then they are, like as other Roman biographies from that period. I would take it as the genre of the Gospels as a biography.
Good.
A sort of, and I wouldn't say it's particularly unreliable. In fact, I would say if you look back at the earliest manuscripts, the changes are very minor with
Correct.
the earliest copies.
Correct.
But my question would be like, I don't think all of these Roman biographies are exactly accurate.
Good. Stuart, what would you say?
Well, this is connected to your earlier point. You talked about how we don't have the real Jesus. Well, then what Jesus do we have? Do we have the itinerant preacher who was just a good moral example? Well, it sounds like you're getting into the Jesus seminar of the 70s and the 80s, which has been largely debunked. What did they do? They got together and they said, oh, this Jesus that you have in the Gospels cannot be reliable. Because this Jesus went and did miracles. This Jesus went and claimed to be God. This Jesus went and resurrected from the grave. This Jesus we're going to have to do away with based off of scientific naturalism, because none of these things actually happened. And that's why you've been influenced by David Hume, probably more than you realized.
I've never heard of him, but probably.
Okay, so you have definitely been then. If you haven't heard of him, because he's had more influence on this campus and across the country more than we could ever realize.
Interesting.
And then Jesus Seminar came and said, no, this Jesus wasn't the one of the Gospels. No, it was more, he was a political figure. And so we're going to use him more so as a political figure to understand real politics. You know, he was into social justice, and that was it. And then we're going to look at Christ in such a way where we don't want him to call us to higher standards. And so what did they do? They went and with their nice, beautiful red pen as a seminar, decided that less than 20% of what we have as Jesus' words in the Gospels were really him speaking.
You can't figure that. That's total. I'm totally with you on that. That's
I mean, my good. Okay, well, what's going on there? It's a presupposition they make. What is a presupposition? It's an acknowledgement that I'm saying I'm going to jump to this conclusion based off of no evidence. That's what they did. But we're going to say, but this is way more palatable. So let's just go ahead and do this. Well, all the historical evidence today by any scholar, even the most atheistic today, threw that out. They said the 70s Jesus seminar, historical Jesus, was a joke.
Absolutely, yeah.
Total joke. So, well, you brought that up a little earlier, though, and that's connected to this reliability of the Gospels. And so I'm just saying, be careful with that. Because they would also say something like, oh, Jesus didn't really resurrect. Yes, he died, but really his body was thrown into a mass grave and some dogs came along and ate it.
Certainly.
That's what they said. But we have Joseph of Arimathea, who would have been the top dog at the Sanhedrin, the last one to have actually taken Jesus Christ and buried him in a grave. But he said, wow, this truly is the Son of God. I'm going to take him and bury him in this grave. And he rose three days later. And so you have Nicodemus, who's also the top dog in the Jewish Sanhedrin. He would be the last one to do it as well. These guys are giving over their reputations entirely because they're starting to realize, wow, he truly is the Son of God.
Certainly.
So you got to watch your emotional bias, I would say. We all have emotional biases more than we realize.
Yeah,
and start to doubt those doubts and say, wow, why am I doubting? What am I falling into? Is it something here that I don't like that Jesus claims? Or is it truly, no, I'm following the evidence, I believe. And I don't believe that he did really claim to be God. And I don't believe the evidence shows that he did resurrect. And I don't believe that the early church popped into existence and took over almost the whole Roman Empire based off of a true story. No, it's this giant hoax, and I know many people were going to their death for it. But I don't know what happened, but I just don't believe it really occurred. No one has given a good explanation for these things, though, from a naturalistic perspective or from a historical perspective.
Certainly. That's my apologies if I miscommunicate. I'm
No,
not
no.
trying to say I do know what Jesus didn't say or what he. I just would say it's what I'm trying to say is that these are biographies and are based on either eyewitness accounts or oral traditions. And there can be, even with eyewitness accounts we have in courts and stuff, details change. People may forget some things. So I'm not trying to say I know what Jesus didn't say or what he's like or I don't like he said this or whatever.
But the range of details and the differences that we bring to a court of law based off of some type of, if we're both detectives, to a crime scene, our testimonies will be different. And when historical scholars see differences in ancient manuscripts, they say, that probably happened. If they don't see differences, they say, collusion, that did not happen. And so eyewitness testimony is still taken as the number one piece of evidence, even more so than DNA evidence today. And so even if we had DNA evidence from Jesus' body back then, that would not be stronger than eyewitness testimony.
And I mean, certainly there's independent attestation in the Gospels, which really does show that I totally believe Jesus was 100% historical figure. I don't know exactly everything that happened other than outside Paul and the Gospels, really. But
all right, let me ask you a question. If I am right that Jesus Christ loves you and me and that he offers us eternal life, if I believe in him, I go to heaven.
yes,
If you reject him, you go to hell.
yes,
Now, I don't think that's a good reason for you to believe in Jesus, but I think it's a great reason for you to study the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in order to figure out, is he reliable or not? Does that make sense?
absolutely. No, I have much more studying of the Gospels to do, especially after this conversation. You guys have brought up a lot of great points.
It's only 140 pages, so don't worry. It's just Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, about 140 pages. You're a very thoughtful guy. You owe it to yourself as a thinking human being to read those Gospels and then to ascertain, does the evidence point to me being able to trust Jesus, or is there, the evidence points to me not being able to trust Jesus? Now remember, the mistake that I listen to on a regular basis is, well, there's not enough evidence. There's some evidence for Christ, but there's not enough. Okay, but here's the mistake, and that one is. Okay, fine. So what you're telling me is, here's my standard of evidence. The evidence for Christ falls short of that. No problem so far. But now what you got to tell me is, who or what are you living for? And secondly, what is the evidence that whatever you're living for, whoever you're living for, is true? And sir, the answer that I've gotten to those two questions for 44 years of speaking on some of the finest campuses in the United States is scary. Scary. Yeah, we can be skeptics, and skepticism is very important. Otherwise, we'll get ripped off and burned, right?
Absolutely.
But we can't be hyper-skeptics, because otherwise, if we're hyper-skeptics, I'll never trust you.
Yeah, I'm just an alien man.
Yeah, you're just an alien man. And you can't trust me, because for all you know, I'm just trying to manipulate you, all right? But no, I have grown to respect you more and more as I've listened to you articulate and speech. Hopefully you're learning to respect us a little more for our reasonable talk. Okay, so that's the way we build relationships, right? We can't prove each other, but we gather evidence that this person is reliable, and then we trust the person, and we build a friendship. Well, that's what Jesus Christ wants with every single one of us. He says, here's the evidence that I'm reliable, I really do love you, and I really want to give you life with God today and eternal life in heaven. Now trust in me. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
You've been a delight. You've made my day, let me tell you.
My day too. I've been waiting for this for so long.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too, man. Thank you. Thank you so much, man.
I believe you found this video helpful. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments